pharmaceutical industry, a very large industry with a very unique history and a very unique structure compared to other industries out there, particularly in the addiction world. So, first, we take a lot of psychotropic drugs. So in this table, we're talking about the standard daily dosage unit. So how many doses of psychotropic drugs does the average person, or do we take per thousand people in the population? This is from 2014. So overall, the United States takes 111 daily doses per thousand people in the population. So about 1 in 10 people are taking a psychotropic drug every day in the United States. It's about the same in France. It's about the same in Japan. It's less when you get to low-income countries, middle and low-income countries like South Africa and Pakistan. So it's largely in kind of high-income countries where you have a lot of these drugs both available as well as people able to purchase them. But this does not conclude opioids. And remember, the United States is the most drugged country in terms of opioids in the entire world. Again, as a brief reminder, the United States, even though it's a large country, we only make up about 5% of the world's population, and we consume 80% of the world's prescription painkillers. So not only do we have consume a lot of psychotropic medication on a daily basis, we consume a lot of painkillers, a lot of opioids on a daily basis. And because we're using so many of these psychotropic drugs, these companies are really large. There's a lot of revenue in pharmaceutical companies. So the largest alcohol producer, AB InBev, they have annual revenues of probably about $50 billion. Johnson & Johnson, the largest pharmaceutical company in the world, has a revenue of $71 billion. Novartis has a revenue of $59 billion. There's actually, and these are actually old numbers, these are 2013, you probably have 4 or 5 companies now who have revenues of over $50 billion a year in psychotropic medications. That is a huge amount. These products are highly profitable, and there are huge profit margins compared to how much research money they invest in their products, how much they market their products, versus how much they can sell them for. Now, the idea of a pharmaceutical medication really came out of the patent medicine movement. The snake oil salesmen from the late 1800s and the early 1900s. These were secret preparations done in a centralized facility with a set ingredient list. It's like doing any kind of recipe from a cookbook. Now, again, most of these original ones did not work. They were snake oil salesmen. They were quack products. They couldn't actually back up what their health claims would be. But this system, this centralized production system, and with this ingredient list, was a forerunner to the modern pharmaceutical industry. No longer were pharmacists compounding, creating the products like on demand. They are being created in a production facility far away from the consumers. And what these patents do, and these medications are patented even today, they're very valuable, is that it gives these companies a monopoly over the production and distribution of these products for at least a short amount of time. And by short amount of time, I could say 10 or 20 years. These patents can run for a relatively long amount of time. And during this time, this is when the products are highly, highly profitable. This is when they can get returns on investment of 10, 20, 30, even 40%. So these patents are very valuable to these countries in a lot of ways. But because these are patent medications, because patents run out, these drugs do follow a relatively predictable lifespan, regardless of what the drug is. So initially, when a new drug is put out on the market, there's this wave of enthusiasm that this new drug is the drug. This is finally the thing that we have found which will cure all disease and will have no side effects. And because we think that this is what the drug will do, doctors tend to use it for more things than what it was intended for. It's prescribed for untested conditions because we think the effects will carry over, or the effects might be slightly different, or we're trying to take advantage of some of the side effects of the product. Now, because of this, because we tend to overextend the use and we don't necessarily understand all the side effects of using this new drug, we tend to find lower than expected effectiveness. So in a randomized clinical trial, the drug could be efficacious, which means that something works in a very controlled environment, but when released into the population, it may not be effective. And because we're trying it in new populations and for untested conditions, there may be more adverse side effects than we initially thought. And because of this, while the drug will continually to be used, but it will be used for fewer conditions, maybe only its intended conditions, like it should have at the beginning, and for narrower circumstances. So it's no longer considered the wonder drug, but it is considered a useful drug for certain types of diseases and in certain circumstances. Now, one of the key things for these psychopharmaceutical companies and for addiction science, which plays a large role in this, is that these drugs are marketed. Psychotropic medications are marketed. And a lot of money is put into this marketing effort. About $70 billion is put into marketing these drugs. And they target two different types of people: the prescribers, the physicians, the physician assistants, the nurses, whoever can actually prescribe a drug, as well as the patients. So, what's going on with the prescribers? Well, you have sales representatives going and talking about the new drugs. These are the people, this is the classic example of someone with their suitcase saying, here's the new drugs, here's what they do, here are the side effects. The prescribers can actually get free samples to pass along to their patients. So the patients can basically get free medication. And if it works, then they're kind of hooked in a non addictive way. They won't necessarily want to go to another medication if they know something works. They give gifts. Now, in the past, this could be free meals. This would be very expensive meals. This would be travel to conferences. A lot of this has been taken away due to conflict of interest issues and regulations. But they'll still give out free things. They'll still pay people to speak. They'll still sponsor continuing education credits and webinars and seminars so that they still have some connection to these physicians. The physicians still see some benefit of these relations. And then they actually design their own platforms and their apps so people can work together. And the key part of all of this is that these marketing practices do work, and they are very effective. A single pen from a pharmaceutical company has been shown to influence prescribing habits. It's not going to influence everybody's prescribing habits, but it certainly influences enough to make it worth to hand out those single pens. Now, there are two countries in the world where psychotropic medications, or really any medications, can be directly marketed to the consumer. That's the US and New Zealand. They actually allow direct-to-consumer advertising by the pharmaceutical industry. And here they're really broken down into three different types of ads. One are help-seeking ads, which is just saying, if you have this condition, talk to your doctor. You have the reminder ad saying, have you seen your doctor recently? Have you taken your medication recently? And then the more popular, the more easy to identify are the product claim ads, the ones where you specifically identify what the product is, what it's intended to treat, and what the side effects of the product are. In every one of these cases, directly or indirectly, these advertisements are intended to increase product demand. The product claim ads do that directly. The help-seeking ads, the reminder ads, do that a little more indirectly, saying, talk to your doctor about condition, and then hoping the provider marketing efforts steer those providers to recommend one certain type of medication.